Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the March SILA Foundation webinar, Identifying and Addressing Bullying in the Workplace. I'm Cindy Davidson. I'm the Education Trustee for SILA Foundation. Today we are delighted to be hearing from Matt Paknis. Matt is an author and senior management consultant who helps companies develop teamwork and leadership skills with a particular focus on identifying and eliminating bullying behaviors at work. He will demonstrate how listening and reflecting techniques can interrupt bullying behavior in a constructive and effective way. Matt will also share basic tools we all can use to prevent and transcend or overcome bullying, empowering us to redirect a power and control dynamic to a much healthier, co-equal, and respectful interaction. Matt can fill us in along the way with his story of how his own experiences have informed this important work. We have an hour, like always, and although you are all on mute, we will be happy to take questions through the Q&A function. I'll keep an eye on those questions as they come in. Please let us know if you're having any technical issues, and we will try to help you out. And now I will turn things over to Matt. He's going to kick us off with some polling questions, I think, so get ready to participate.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, I thought we'd just ask a few questions right off the bat and get some feedback from our folks. We put together a couple polls, and the first one, in a random poll of over 100,000 American adults, how many rank themselves superior, so in the top quartile, in their ability to influence others? Basically, leadership is uplift thought and conduct. And if you could select one of those four options, that'd be great. And these are not separated by gender. These are male and female responding to this question. Is everyone done?
So we're looking like we've got most votes are falling into the 70%.
Yeah, they may have read the article. That's great. Well, that's the top percent. Only 2% rank themselves below average. So that suggests that 98% of the people that you come across consider themselves to be above average leaders, or they uplift you, inspire you, make you feel better, make you think at a higher level. Is that true? The 98% of the people you come across do that for you. Not necessarily. In the same poll was a question about influencing skills, and people were asked the same question: rank yourself in the four quartiles regarding your capacity and your ability to influence people in a very positive way, to get along with other people, so to speak. And all of them, 100%, rank themselves in the top quartile. So we'll go to our second poll. So out of that 100% who felt as though they were superior in their ability to get along with others, and again, I ask you, when you merge on a highway, does everyone allow you to, or you're trying to get on the highway, does everyone allow you to merge? Do people open the door for you? Do people smile at you on your roads when you're on the sidewalk? Usually not, right? So what percentage, not only all of them rank themselves in the top quartile, of all 100% who rank themselves in the 75th percentile and above, what percentage rank themselves in the top 1% or the 99th percentile? Everybody ready?
So it looks like we're in a three-way tie, really. Oh. We're getting there. Okay, more people now loading into 98%.
98%?
Yeah.
Oh, I see it.
You see it.
Okay, yeah, it's actually 25%. So 1/4 felt as though that they were the very, very top percent. But again, the last category they asked was athletic ability, which is most quantifiable. And 60% of the people polled stated they ranked themselves in the top quartile, meaning they were superior in athletic ability. And that's a quantifiable skill. There's winners and losers. There's measured distances, there's speed, there's weight. So what the research really showed significantly, and this was done by Tom Peters, is that privately, these weren't open polls where people were raising their hands in front of other people, but privately, people yearn to succeed and they want to see themselves succeed. And so what happens in a bullying environment is that a bully does just the opposite. He makes someone or he isolates someone who usually poses a threat. The base root of bullying is that the bully is scared to death of being exposed as an incompetent fraud. So ironically, the most talented and the most gifted employees are usually targeted because they are most apt to trigger the bully to say, oh my God, this person is going to make me look bad. And so it's all twisted. It's all about their ego, and they tend to attack rather than help. So our next poll asks, and this again is a general open gender poll, what percentage of the people polled have actually witnessed or experienced workplace bullying, which again is repeated, negative, maligned, demeaning, abusive behavior that is intended to really create a power and control dynamic between the bully and the target. What do you think?
Looks like about 40% are leaning at the 72% answer.
Yeah, 72%.
Yeah, that's the winner.
They're right on target. Maybe they've read, there's some work out there by the NAMIs that has proven this. Yeah, but almost almost 70%, 75% of the population has experienced this. And sadly, we'll turn to our last poll. What percentage have actually elevated it, or a number of the bystanders have actually reported it or addressed it? And this would be people that saw it. Yeah, they're all over it. All right, it looks like I don't need to give my presentation today. No, so my presentation is really about how do we address it. It looks like there's a great need. 75% of the population sees it, but less, almost like 10% of the population feels like they can do anything. And usually, if someone's prohibited from doing something they want to do, it's because they're not able, not willing, or not allowed. And in our corporations and organizations I've been in, there's no real clear avenue about how do you diagnose, and then in turn, how do you report or address workplace bullying and abuse. And a lot of times too, people are sort of confused about the distinction between abuse and harassment and discrimination and bullying. With harassment and discrimination, you usually qualify in a protected class. Well, often bullying can be qualified as that as well, because people that are being bullied, the targets, most people qualify or can be categorized in one of the main protected classes. Before I go on, though, I just wanted to start, and I learned yesterday that a majority of my audience today is going to be female. And my book is dedicated to my mom, who died in 1979 when I was 17. And when I was 9 years old, I had the trifecta. She was diagnosed initially with her disease, which ultimately killed her, which was melanoma, in stage 4 melanoma in her lymph system. So she had over 2,000 stitches removed. That really ramped up. My father was very angry from the get-go, and I was often the target of his aggression. But it really ramped up when that happened. And so, I remember one time in particular, I came home at lunch. We'd gotten a new puppy, and my mom had just gone through one of her major surgeries requiring over 2,000 stitches, which removed all her lymph system. And I got home, and my grandparents were there, which was a shock, and my dad was there. And my mom was being rolled out of the house in a gurney. So I was asked to take the dog for a walk. I returned. They asked me to take the dog for a walk so I wouldn't see my mom being driven off. I was 9 years old at the time, being driven off in an ambulance. Well, as it turns out, she didn't know which way I went. she ended up going down the road that I went down with the dog, and I could see her. We just locked eyes, and I figured that was the last time I was going to see her. So I returned to my house for lunch. My grandmother, bless her soul, she loved ham. She made a ham sandwich, and I didn't really eat ham. I wasn't complaining. I just said, "Can I make myself a peanut butter sandwich?" And with that, my father, as he always did from behind, he attacked. And I'm sharing this story, and he hit me, and my head flew into the plate, broke my nose, and I just left in tears and went back to school where no one did anything. I just sat in the room like that with a teacher who I to this day I think was an alcoholic, and no one did anything to protect me or to address me, and I was clearly flustered and bloodied and messed up. The reason why I share this is so my mom. The long story is my mom ended up pulling through, but she was very sick for the next 7-8 years, and she died during my senior year when I was one of the captains, and I was the only 3-year starter on a football team that didn't lose for 3 years, and we were the top ranked team in New Jersey. I share this story because bullying in the workplace is often made analogous to domestic violence. Both horrific, horrible experiences. It's about power and control. It's not about excellence. It's not about achieving goals. It's about setting people up with extreme, unrealistic goals to try to get them feeling inferior or overpowered by the bully. And so as I progressed, my mom, I was blessed. The third thing that happened was I was targeted by a sexual predator in the neighborhood. And so I was abused from the time I was about in fourth grade to about the time when I was in 7th grade, and was beaten on a regular basis. And then, obviously we had a lot of tension. So I just withdrew. I was overwhelmed with stress, anxiety. A lot of these things happen with people that are bullied at work. And my mom found me the help that I needed. And I went and I was able to sort of separate. I was overwhelmed with OCD. I just withdrew. I hid. I was afraid to go outside of the house, which often happens with adults that are bullied. And I eventually got this good treatment, made me feel good about myself. I took some intelligence tests. I was a horrible student at the time. I had been a very good student before all these crazy things happened. And then, I felt relaxed. And then I had a growth spurt. And when I was in 8th grade, I was about 6'1", maybe 190 pounds, undefeated in wrestling my first year and my second year. And then football came along. And I became the only sophomore starter on a state championship team, as mentioned, and then never lost a game through high school. My grades turned around, and I ended up, in addition to being recruited by Division I schools, I took the SATs the week my mom died. She died on a Friday. We had our game, state championship playoff game on a Saturday. And then on Sunday, 1979 in the fall, we had to take our SATs, the seniors. And then that following Thursday was our Thanksgiving game against Milburn. So within that, 1 week period, I had these major events. And because I was part of a team, because I was I had exposure to exceptional leadership, good people, I felt a part of a very strong support group. I was able to stay focused and stay moving ahead. Got my SATs back, and I got recruited by all the Ivy League schools and the service academies, in addition to most of the major, really good Division I schools that also have reported good academics as well. I started actually because my coach had such a significant impact on my life. I wanted to do that. I went to Brown. I had a good football career at Brown that led to tryouts with the Pats and Giants. That didn't materialize. So my coaching staff actually asked me to become a coach. And I'd been a teaching assistant for many courses at Brown, and I loved football. So I just decided to put those two together. And ironically, after my 2 years of Brown coaching, I was offered 2 very esteemed coaching positions, one at the University of Washington, Seattle, with a guy named John James, and the other at Penn State University with Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky. I never saw anything happen, but in retrospect, in 2011, when I did learn It just all fit together. And since that time, I've committed. After I got an MBA, I did 2 more years of coaching at URI after I coached at Penn State. And I started doing corporate retreats on team building and leadership development because they'd had such a major influence on my life. Then when the Sandusky scandal hit, I realized that I could have protected a lot of kids if I had known more and seen more for the next 24 years. And I had great remorse about that. And so I decided to commit my life to not only stopping bullying in the workplace, where I was really sort of specializing. People would come to me, they felt they could trust me. They started saying to me more and more, Matt, I got to share a story with you. And I'd get it addressed and I'd get it fixed. I built up an international consulting practice over about a 30-year period. And in 2011, the story hit about Sandusky. I became public with it. Then a couple of years later, I was asked to write a book by a publisher on workplace bullying, in addition to a book about dealing with bullies in your personal life, which is coming out. So I've noticed over the last 30 years a great increase in the amount of bullying in the workplace. When I first got there, I was sincerely asked to offer programs to help people improve their management skills and leadership skills to avoid unionization. That was the number one priority. If we treat our people well and we pay them well, there's no reason for them to be in a union. We want to treat them better than a union can treat them. And that was a sincere interest. Now, the interest was obviously to save money and have more flexibility in development and production. But it was sincere. And there were good people. So if I did run across a bully or someone, people would come and tell me, and we'd address it. And I'd address it privately, and it would get addressed and it would get fixed. And the person that was bullied would be, told that it was corrected and it wouldn't happen again. Over the years, that's gone away. It seems as though there's more and more people that are more apt to bully. I was in a huge financial services institution that went public while I was there, and a new CEO came in to do this, to help facilitate this. And he brought in all his henchmen and women, and I ended up reporting to one of them. There was no interest in performance. Anything you did could not meet the standards, and they were just vicious, and you could tell they just enjoyed the opportunity to knock other people down and take them out, which was totally opposite of anything I'd ever learned about my great coaches, teachers, or really good bosses I'd been fortunate enough to have outside of Sandusky and Paterno, who were both bullies. So we'll look at three things. We'll look at how do you identify four things. How do you identify workplace bullying? What are some traits in an organization that give you a clue as to whether or not it's a bullying type organization? What are some signs that you're on a team or in a relationship that's more based on power and control than co-equal, respectful dynamics and relating? And what can I do? And how do I respond? And how do I overcome this once this is trauma. Anybody that's been bullying, I'm on all these different groups all around the world on social media. And a person this morning said, for 2 years I've been locked in. So you're experiencing trauma. You need to see a trauma specialist about that, where you can share your secrets, where you can separate, your cognitive distortions from reality, where you can start making healthier decisions, where you can surround yourself with healthier people and make proactive decisions which lead to really healthy outcomes. A lot of times people that have been traumatized in many different ways, and I've experienced pretty much all of them in my personal life, you can get locked in. It's where you can't move forward. And so the best way to transcend is to be able to get into, with a licensed professional, a healing process or a therapy process that allows you to go through. First thing we'll do, like I said, is look at some of the traits that separate and distinguish a bullying organization from a real healthy organization. If anyone's had the luxury of having an experience of working in a place where you're like, man, I just love it there. It's just phenomenal. You'll tend to have the four areas or the four parameters that are on the right as defined as they are on the right. The focus, these are the four traits. Again, the real defining factor of a culture is not what nice words that are on the wall, but it's what it really what defines the culture are the behaviors that you've seen. The real values that the company embraces are always demonstrated by the actual behaviors. So they could say we believe in team building and all this, but if there's a lot of criticism and negativity and bullying, that's what the culture is all about. It's not about team building and collaboration and cooperation. First is focus. And just as a baseline common denominator, on the left side, on the just thriving side, and I hate to pick on them, but the bullying organization that probably you can best identify with is the RMV, is your local state register a motor vehicle or division of motor vehicle, and thinking about when you have to go in and register a car or have your license renewed. A lot of states, including Massachusetts, because I don't want to get them mad at me here, have really improved the process. But in general, highly bureaucratic government financial institutions usually tend to end up on the left, and we'll talk about that in a second. On the right, the organizations tend to be future focused, external, and there's visions and goals. That means if you walk around and you talk to maybe 80 to 85% of the people in the organization, they're going to come back to you and you say, where's the organization going in 1, 5, 10 years? You're going to get a relatively same answer. And they're also going to be able to answer this. And this is what I have to do to make that happen. So people are very bought in to where the organization is going, and they are committed. They feel as though what their work does makes the company accountable and successful. On the left, if you ask the people where they're heading, they'll say, well, I'm really concerned about break time. Do you really need to be wasting my time? They're just about the here and now, internal and tactical. And bullies who really put people through stress and torture like to keep them in the moment. When a person's being tortured or a person is being, abused, their focus is in that moment. That's what the bully wants, and that's what they want you to be, here and now, internal and tactical. Now, both these parameters have to be part of an organization to move it forward. But in a real healthy organization, most of the people have an idea and they're excited about where the organization is going, and they can see how they're a part of it, and they're happy to be there, and they feel embraced by the organization. And that leads to the next topic, which is structure. In very healthy organizations, there's collaboration, open, two-way, co-equal, respectful dynamic and communication. On the left, it's one way, top-down communication. This division doesn't talk to this division, and just get the job done. Again, keeping you under the gun by those tasks that attempt to control you, rather than having shared accountability and tasks where we're all part of it. And on the right, what's distinguishing is that these organizations really prioritize relationship. That takes precedent over task. Respect, dignity, and dignity and respect are really the opposite of bullying. Humanity, treating people well, treating people with respect and decency. Third trait relates not only to your external customers, but also employees. If you feel valued, if you feel as though the company is willing to adapt to you and your specific needs and wants to be a better employee or citizen, they adapt to you. And if there's a problem, it's like a SWAT team. Many people can come to you. Whereas like an ice cream stand in the summer, in organizations that are just making it, there's usually one person with a long line waiting for them, like the DMV. The lunchtime comes up, you've been in line for an hour and a half, no eye contact, they just say break time and walk away. So they treat you like a necessary evil, and they expect you to adapt to them, and rather than vice versa. So these, again, if you're experiencing the traits on the left side of this dichotomy, it's most likely that your organization or your group is more prone to bullying. They're more prone to treating people like a number. Whereas if you work on an organization, or if you'd like to work for an organization on the right and change the organization to make it be on the right, that organization is very uplifting, inspiring, and enabling people to be the best they can be. The last trait, and again, not only do the companies on the right treat their customers that way, they treat their employees that way. The last trait is leadership, and it doesn't mean our senior executives or officials And I really don't refer to bullies as leaders. I refer to them as executives or officials that are on a power high. Leaders are people that uplift thought and conduct. That's what leaders do. It's the only, that's how you define them. If who you're experiencing at work is not uplifting your thought or your conduct, they're not a leader. They're not a good manager. They're most likely a bully. So companies that are filled with really healthy leaders have everyone, and this is related again to the focus and the structure, everyone feels as though what they do is imperative for the organization's success. So as a result, people are there, they want to be there, and they're given a level of authority where they can make that happen. They know that they can take accountable risks without having to go through 3 layers of permission all the time. Organizations that are on the left have one clearly defined leader, Joe Paterno, right? There's a hero leader myth, so no one wants to step out of line because no one wants to make that person upset. And as a result, people are risk averse and they're compliant. People knew what was going on. I did not. People knew what was going on at Penn State, and they were compliant at the cost of young souls. And again, this is one of my greatest motivators, senses of remorse. To reinforce this is just a little tool some of you may want to use. Over in the top left corner are really your brand, cost, quality, safety, innovation. These are often, some words that are thrown out, teamwork, that companies state they believe in, or they're really their core values in their brand. Well, the way you really determine a brand and whether or not it's true and whether it has integrity is that if all those traits are demonstrated in 3 other areas. So if you say teamwork, all the people in that organization, their behavior should reflect those core values. So you see, people treating each other with dignity and respect. They're solving problems together. They engage one another. They include one another. There's no isolation. There's no bullying. There's no demeaning. There's no picking on. There's no cliques, anything like that. It's very collaborative and very mature and rational. All the facilities reflect, if you say, okay, we're all about cost, quality, schedule, innovation, all the facilities should be updated, spotless, clean, safe. The equipment, the physical plant should reflect the brand as well, or those core values. And likewise, every process, every transaction that someone makes, either as an employee or as a customer, should also reflect that cost, quality, schedule, safety, innovation, teamwork, uplifting, so they feel as though they have a very uplifting and positive experience every time they have to transact with either their employer or their provider, their customer. And really the base of this is the cycle of effectiveness, where there's a healthy relationship. And like I said, my coach, Ted Monica, Madison, New Jersey, passed last year at 91. I was honored to be one of his eulogists, and we went through 33 games together, he and I asked him, I would visit him every Thanksgiving. I'd take him to the Thanksgiving game until it ended a couple of years ago, but we'd go every year because that was a very significant week in my life. And I'd pick him up in the morning and we'd go. The game was at 11, and I say, was there any other player playing for you that went undefeated for 3 years on 3 consecutive teams? He goes, no. So I have that distinction, and I think it was like a gift from God that sort of helped me, because that team and my classmates in school became my family, basically. I got that real sense of love, healthy love from them. And, I stayed in touch with them. And that relationship that we had, I just had very, very high levels of thought, respect, admiration for him. And I had a sense it was mutual. And that led to me playing the absolute best I could play, which led to some really nice results. But we had to get the whole, obviously the whole team is responsible for results, not just one person. But those results then reaffirm that relationship. So it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And one of the organizations I worked for was an insurance organization they had a gentleman who posted a calendar, and it wasn't completely risque. It got approval, but it really could be offensive to some people, and it shouldn't have been allowed to be out. And people would walk all the way around the perimeter of that office building rather than walk by his cubicle just to avoid that calendar. The quality of their thinking impacted their actions, which ultimately slowed down results and undermined productivity. When productivity numbers dropped, it further hurt their feelings about one another and the way they thought about one another, and undermined their effectiveness overall. This is Eric Berne's model, and basically in a healthy organization, I've referenced it a couple times. This is what healthy leaders do. In the middle, they reinforce an adult to adult perspective where people talk in an objective, mature, realistic, and an objective manner. Eric Berne theorized that every person has three components of their personality. Everyone has a parent based on the parental role model that they had. And again, my mother was sort of like this virtuous aunt. She never cried. I never saw her cry. She was 5'3", about 125 pounds. My dad was about 6'2", about 290 pounds, rock solid. And I gained her agility and his size, which sort of benefited me. But she never complained. She was never critical. She was the essence of love. She was just embraced by friends and family. My dad, public angel, private devil, was not that way. And so my mom was there more on that mature, rational, objective. And that's what I sort of looked at in teachers, coaches, really good managers that I really identified as good and healthy managers. They're assertive. They're looking for win-win options, but they're looking for everyone to win. Whereas the bullies are more interested in that power and control dynamic. So when you're accessing memories of your childhood and your parent in your childhood, you access healthy memories of that parent when you want to assess decisions, evaluate, analyze, problem solve. If your parental role model was extremely critical of you or others, or prejudged others, your capacity to rationalize like a mature adult can be contaminated by their prejudgments, and you're going to jump to conclusions, often inaccurate, criticisms about other people. And so you're going to have those prejudices that interfere with your capacity to really get to that rational, realistic perspective. Likewise, you need a healthy childhood to reflect on and have humor, fun, to play, to enjoy yourself. But if your childhood was dominated by abuse, your capacity to rationalize like a mature adult is going to be contaminated with those fearful filters, and you're going to be delusional about your experience. So bullies tap into this, and they sometimes can sense it, like German shepherds. And I'd like to say, like a Labrador, I can sort of smell bullies, and unfortunately, I can smell people that do worse things or just as bad things in the power control realm and dynamic. But I get a sense, like a sixth sense, from being around people. If you are overly critical, or if your boss becomes overly critical of you, you have three options. If you're a very mature, rational person, you can just go back in a mature, objective way and say, look, I can hear you saying this. I'm guessing, you're having a bad day so far. What do you say we revisit this later in the day? If you had a very fearful childhood and you're more delusional, you're most likely to tell yourself, oh my God, what am I doing now? I'm gonna lose my job. I'm an idiot. I always get in trouble. What's wrong with me? If you had an overly critical parent, there's a good chance you're going to come back to them like a critical parent. It's like, oh yeah, well, let me tell you what I think about you. And that's going to end up being a downward spiral, and it's going to roll out of place. So the real tools, the reflective tools that we're talking about, is if someone approaches you and says something, or you're triggered, try to revert to the facts and just make an observation. I can see, I can hear, I noticed, and then share your opinion in the form of a question. I'm guessing you're in a rush this morning. I'm guessing you're not having a good morning. I'm guessing you don't like the numbers that you got. And then checking in, is that true? So that neutralizes the person, separates you from their downward spiral, and allows you to maintain this adult to adult assertive rather than aggressive or submissive positioning and dynamic that happens, that's key to that bullying dynamic in relationship. This is just a brief model. A lot of times, another way to help people really identify and correct or remove bullies from an organization is to really write out, as we were recommended in the diagram back, I think on slide 3. Slide 5. Once you really define your core values and the behaviors that reflect those core values, you can sit down and determine, okay, in your organization, on your team, who are the people that are really aligned, and this is along the horizontal axis, that are aligned and really reflect and demonstrate the company's core values. And then on the left side of that parameter are the people that, are your problem children. They're folks that maybe, if they're good performers, and that's the vertical axis is actual performance, if they're good performers, but they're not necessarily aligned with the values. And often those are the people get sort of protected, or we were just talking, Cindy and I were just talking about someone in the public works department. I guess it was in the LA Times yesterday, and it'd been there for years, carrying on horrific behaviors, which I've seen several times in many different organizations in my 30-year career. And the first question is, why are they still there? And it gets back to, well, they have a lot of information. If they go down, they're taking the regime with them. That's often the case, which is horrific. Or it's perceived that they're irreplaceable, and everyone is replaceable, but they have a unique knowledge, skill, talent, customer set that you don't want to let go. So you let those behaviors go. Well, what that does to the rest of the morale on the team and the motivation, it just drops it through the floor. So the best thing to do is to coach people, get them up, get them accountable, and give them a real clear guidelines and consequence for correcting their behaviors. If they're below average in performance and they're not aligned, they shouldn't be there. And my argument is, if they're to the left of that midpoint on the conduct and behavioral continuum, they shouldn't be there either. But we want to try to be fair, let people turn around if they can turn around. I have seen some situations where people were able to really grab themselves. They may be acting the whole time, but as long as the people at work are not being abused or suffering, if they could be acting all day, once they leave and they're on their own, they can act whatever they want. But as long as they're treating their coworkers well, that's what's important. Obviously, if they're doing something horrific, like abusing another person or something outside of work, that's got to be stopped as well. But ideally, you really want to reward, just as you reward performance on the vertical axis, you want to reward behaviors and incentivize people to behave well, not only perform well, but to behave well with dignity, with respect. This just generally shows bullies tend to be narcissistic, and a narcissistic is really defined with 3 traits. They tend to lie, they're very deceptive, they're selfish, and they have an inability to evaluate themselves critically. And so they have a lot of blind spots. And this is just the Johari window. And in organizations that are healthy, we tend to have a lot of opportunity because people are self-aware and they know about themselves. So in the top left corner, this would be like your entranceway in your house. It's what you allow people to see. It's what the public knows about you and what the private knows about you. I used to talk about Donald Trump. I don't want to get political here, but I talk about his hair and say we can all agree. He can agree. Everyone else can agree. He's got some crazy hair. It's known to the public. Down here is what is known by the person, but kept secret from the public. And again, that's abuse. Majority of the people that I've seen that are bullies, they take people aside privately and just ream them, rip into them because they don't want any witnesses. Jerry Sandusky's behavior was all those type of pedophiles and predators and bullies, and I lump them all together because it's not about sex. It's about power and control, abuse, domestic violence, same thing, hidden torture. That's that bottom left, and those again would be analogous to in your bed, in your house, your private rooms, your bathrooms, your bedroom. Up on the top right is what others know of you, but what you don't know about yourself. And I had a situation in one of my it was one of my financial services clients. The CEO was a great guy. He'd get up and give this talk every 8 weeks on the financial status of the company, but he'd pick his nose in the process, and everyone was afraid to tell him. So he would just do it, and everyone would talk about it. I took him aside one time, and I told him, privately, and he really sort of took me under his wing after that. But I was like, hey, this guy's a good guy. He's doing a good job, and I think people enjoyed watching sort of like the show, and they got a lot of laughs over it. But it was horrible. It took the whole focus away from the presentation. That's a blind spot. And then lastly, and again, I used the tools. I reflected, hey, I notice you do a lot of really good preparation for your presentation, but I'm guessing you don't realize you're doing something during the presentation that really distracts the audience. He goes, what is it? I said, well, what do you think it is? And he goes, well, I don't know. You got to tell me. So I ended up having to tell him, but he was most appreciative. Down the bottom right is what is unknown. And the only way you can get there is by being honest with yourself and honest with others about what you see. And that's where opportunity lies. And there was a young man in Rhode Island a couple of years ago who, freshman year, he came in. I think he grew up in Liberia. He ended up in Rhode Island because his uncle got a job with Amgen. He came to live with his uncle. His mother said, you can't grow up in Liberia. And he ends up going out for track with his cousin, who was the same age. And I guess they're two freshmen at Exeter, West Greenwich, or no, it was Charahoe High School. Charahoe High School in Rhode Island, Hopkinton, Charleston High School. And he, just trying different things. And the coach says, hey, why don't you try the long jump? You're long, you're lean. Go down there with the other guys. Tell me how far you jump, come back. So they all come back. There are 5 kids. One kid goes, I jumped about 10 feet, jumped about 12 feet. Hey, I jumped 14 feet. And then this boy from Liberia goes, I jumped 22 feet. And the coach goes, no, you didn't. He goes, no. All the rest of the guys go, yeah, he did. And their eyes are wide open. And, that's near a national record. And sure enough, he was ranked top 3 in the nation in both that, and the coach in his wisdom said, hey, let's go try the high jump. And I think he cleared 6'6" in his first high jump. So we can't get to that point of opportunity.
Okay, looks like we lost Matt momentarily. There we go. Okay, you're back. Hold on. I think we just missed
I get lost?
Yeah, we missed some of what. But while we're here, I wanted to give you a time check, Matt, because it's 12:43, and it looks like you still have a couple more slides. So I just wanted to bring us back kind of on track there.
These are just Daniel Goleman. I wanted to reference the emotional intelligence. He argues that your EQ is a greater predictor of success in the business world than your IQ. And he uses presidents to highlight his examples, saying, Jimmy Carter has probably had the highest IQ out of all modern era presidents. I think Nixon was number 2. Neither will go down as a great president. Clinton, ironically, I think had the 3rd highest IQ, but he also had very high EQ, and he'll be considered, except for a few impulse control issues that he had, a pretty good president. The president with the most EQ in the modern era was FDR. The person with the 2nd highest EQ in modern era was Reagan. Both will go down as very good presidents, very effective presidents. And that sort of backed up his argument. And you probably know people that are extreme. There was an article on genius people and among us in Rhode Island a couple of years ago. And a guy with like over close to a 200 IQ was doing the dishes in our local Newport Creamery. And it's just that couldn't, despite having this very, very extreme intelligence, just did not have the social skills to really be able to get it out and to help facilitate it. And so we can see, if you want to help people perform at your best, treating them with empathy, being able to regulate yourself, knowing yourself, being able to motivate other people, being able to read other people. Those are all the critical components. And Goldman says self-awareness that really is related to that Johari window, not having blind spots, knowing yourself implicitly tends to set you up for success. And it makes you less apt to be triggered by someone who's very, very talented. And again, that's the root cause of bullying. People are afraid of being exposed as a fraud, as an incompetent fraud. Just as the last, how do you overcome trauma? Where you're moving along and all of a sudden there's a change. And a change is something, you have expectations in your life and change. People with more stress in their lives tend to have a larger gap between where they'd like to be and where they are, with regarding their health or friends and family, fun and recreation, their romance, their finance, their career, spiritual, emotional well-being, their physical surroundings, where they live, where they work. Let's say you have a change. You're going along and all of a sudden there's this change. And I got a story to represent this. It's Flo Chadwick was a great swimmer, Olympic swimmer in the 50s, but she really loved distance swimming. And she was the first woman to swim many major distances like the English Channel. And she wanted to be the first woman to swim between Los Angeles and the Bay, the island out there in Los Angeles. And it'll come to me in a second.
Catalina. I live here. I know Catalina Island.
Thank you. That's near you, right, Cindy?
Yes, I actually know people who have done that swim. It's 22 miles, I think.
22 miles, and she was the first woman to attempt it. Thank you. Give yourself a check, positive check. Immunity. By the way, you want to change behaviors, Ken Blanchard says 3 things. Catch people doing something right, address behaviors and not the people, attack behavior and not people, and have really clear goals. So anyhow, Flo Chadwick was getting ready. She had 3 boats with her, which was critical just to follow her. She was swimming, and she started swimming, and it was a real foggy day. So she couldn't see the dock where she was supposed to land in Los Angeles. Every time she put her head up, she'd just see the fog. So ultimately, she got about like a mile away, 15 minutes away, and she froze. She seized. All the cortisol in her body just made her move, made her muscles stop moving. And so they had to take her out of the water. And she was so despondent. Her mom was one of the people in one of the boats. And she did something very significant. She went on a clear day and she took a picture of the dock and she posted that in her bedroom, and she studied it every night and every morning. And the day came for her to swim again, and it was more foggy than the first day. So this time she gets in the water and she starts swimming, and she takes her out of the water. And again, she had 3 people around her, 3 boats around her filled with people, support people. But this time, every time she took her head out of the water, she'd actually tricked her mind into believing she was looking at the dock. So she didn't stop. She really believed in where she was going. And as a result, you think she made it. I wish we had a live audience. She didn't make it. She was eaten by sharks. But the point is, she had a very clear goal. And let me correct that. She did make it. Not only did she make it, she broke the time record. She swam it faster than any male had ever been able to swim it. And they asked her why. And she said, well, it's because of 2 things. I had a really clear goal, and I had people around me that loved me, and they knew I could make it. And so usually what happens is when you have a problem and a change happens that you didn't expect, you go through a time of adjustment and reflection, which is that resistance. And this is William Bridges' model, and it's based on Catherine, on Death and Dying book on transition, how people respond to grieving and death. And if you don't have direction, there can be characters called valley dwellers that keep you in that resistance spot, and they keep you focused on whatever was that originally put you in that place. First it happens, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe it's foggy today. Oh my God, I wish it wasn't foggy today. That's all her focus was on. The first trip was on between 1 and 2. On the second trip, she acknowledged the fog, And she explored opportunity and said, well, what if I visualize this and really lock it in my head? So regardless of the weather the second day, I'm going to keep going. And the two things, focuses you need is that thing that's going to pull you along to help you with commitment, which is that green dot, but also that support structure that's going to counterbalance any negativity that you might come across. So the three questions to ask yourself and your organization, again, if you're not able to do something, things are not changing, or things aren't being implemented as you wished or hoped, it usually comes down to one of three things. You're not willing, or the organization's not willing, you're not allowed, or you're not able. Willingness is sort of like a 4-point continuum. I'm obstinate, I'm ambivalent, I'm compliant, or I'm committed. I'm ready to go. Ability has a lot to do, can this person stop? You got to ask yourself, can this person really stop their abusive behaviors? Abusive behavior can become almost like an obsession, an addiction. People even want to stop, but they can't. You can't explain why someone comes home and torments a young boy, attacks him, throws, hits him in the back of the head. It's just, it's a compulsion. And so you really have to determine, and the best thing obviously to do is have a system that selects managers so you don't have to do this correction. So your vetting process really is aligned with your competencies, so you're bringing good people in to your leadership roles. And the other thing is, are you really allowed to identify and report bullying? A lot of people say we have zero tolerance. What does that mean? If you really are concerned and committed to stopping bullying in the workplace, there should be big bulletins and posters on the board describing bullying behaviors, and then safe and clear reporting mechanisms that safeguard people from retaliation and retribution. If someone says they don't tolerate bullying, I said, well, where are your policies? Where are the signs on the walls that describe what exactly bullying is and what people can do if they see it and witness it? Because right now, unless you have a good, solid, trustworthy person in the organization, as I ran into and which I cultivated in my consulting and my work life, and a lot aren't there, you're either going to have to go to an attorney or ideally find a new job. That's why also I recommend third parties. Be one of the last people to recommend it, because I think if you have good management, unions aren't needed, but people need third parties. They need advocates. They need support. They need people to protect them. And our managers and leaders in many of the organizations that I've experienced are not there. HR, and I think this is related to the great disparity in salaries that has really grown since I entered the workforce. I think, they're more protective of the managers and their own jobs and their own salaries. There are still good and decent people in HR, but a majority, I'm afraid, are more concerned with their parking spaces in their cars and protecting their well-being and the well-being of the executives rather than the frontline workers. And so if you need help in assessing any of this, happy to help any of you. This is my contact information. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Like I said, if you have any questions, I really appreciate it. I was really enjoyed my time in the insurance industry. And thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Mary Ellen.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for all of your wisdom. I noticed I made a couple notes. One is that zero tolerance is a myth. Anyone who has had kids in middle school knows that to be true. So it's a thing that administrators say, and it has zero meaning. Zero tolerance has zero meaning. That's my new mantra. I thought it was very important how you highlighted that behavior is so much more important than words on the board or slogans or whatever. You really do observe behavior in the workplace. I have we didn't get any questions in the Q&A. I do have two quickies, I think, if you can quickly jump on them. One is, once you've gone to HR, and I agree with you 100%, HR's job is to protect the business and to protect reputational risk, and not necessarily to be your advocate if you're the one being bullied. But how effective is it when there's a reprimand from HR or people are forced to go through, say, counseling? What's your experience with the effectiveness of that or ineffectiveness of that?
So just to clarify, if there is a fact find done, an investigation, and they find, yeah, this manager was abusive, and they turn around and say, okay, we're going to send them to charm school, or is that what you're referring to?
Yes,
It's not the
exactly.
people that are targeted that have to go, that are getting healing. It's the person that's the perpetrator, right?
Correct.
Unfortunately, I have worked quite involved with people that, for whatever reason, they just sort of went off the deep end. They changed, everything was going well, and they had a problem, but their behaviors changed as managers, and they became very aggressive and abusive. And I worked with them, and I would do the assessment, and the success rate is not great. That honestly, if they have other talents and other skills, where they might be able to really work on a specific product.
Interesting. I suspected as much, but
Yeah.
just thought I'd like to hear an expert confirm that. And then I wonder if you could weigh in on, it wasn't part of the conversation today, but cyberbullying. It just seems like with the anonymity of online interactions with social media, it seems to have driven bad behavior in real life and possibly at work. Is that also something you've seen?
Yeah, I do address cyberbullying. I'm sorry, we didn't really talk about it that much. It's the dark hole. It's horrible. And, people can hide behind things. People get very brave when they don't have to be face to face. 50%, I think your credibility or your believability is 70% based on your presence. I'm sorry, 55% based on your presence, 38% based on your voice, and only 7% based on the content of your message. And
Right.
so, on internet, it's all message. So people are making up what's in their mind, and people can create these perceptions that are just way, way out of perspective. And
Well, it just seems like it goes straight to name calling and straight
yeah,
to nastiness. It's kind of like face to face, you're more
oh
likely
yeah,
to preserve kind of social norms, and then over the phone is maybe next step down, and then once you're on the internet, all bets are off.
yeah.
Everybody's just horrible to each
And then
other.
people can hide.
So
People can hide. They can
yeah,
be.
right. It's the anonymity of it. So
Yeah.
we hardly ever run out of time, but this is an incredibly interesting and great subject. I'm gonna close us out with letting everyone know the webinar has been recorded and we'll post it to the SILA Foundation YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks. Our speakers' contact information is available, so be sure to reach out to Matt with any specific or private questions you might have after we close. You will be receiving a post-webinar survey, so please fill that out and provide us with some candid feedback that will help us improve on these webinars going forward. Foundation provides these webinars free of charge as a part of our mission and outreach. If you learned something of value today, please consider a personal or corporate donation to the Foundation. No amount is too small. We do rely on donations to keep programs like these webinars going. Also, the Foundation recently opened up these webinars to sponsorship. So if your firm might be interested in sponsoring a future webinar, let me or Mary Ellen know. Thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks, Matt, again for your expertise. And everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mary Ellen, too. I'll see you.
Bye, guys.